Okay. Okay. A very warm welcome, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, people that have participated in the Brussels Energy Club meetings on previous occasions, and a very special welcome to people that have not yet participated in one of our meetings. I hope this is just your first of many attendances and engagements with the Brussels Energy Club. So my name is Marat Terterov. I guess I'm originally the founder of the Brussels Energy Club back in 2012. And I would like to say a great thank you, first of all, to Nadezhda Kokotovic, who is currently the director of the Brussels Energy Club, who I guess saw the need or interest to invite me kindly to just say a few words of introduction and just introduce this meeting. So for the people that have not been to our events before, well, we very much established ourselves as a discussion platform, but very much as a discussion club. We have members who come from different areas of the international energy sector, some corporate members, some individual members, but essentially we are very much an independent and non-aligned to any particular positions, views, or interests, and we are, very much a discussion platform where people gather, energy professionals gather from all walks of life, from all parts of the world, and discuss a relevant topic for those sort of people. So in our very early days of operation, like 8-10 years ago, much of our attention focused on discussions between, well, really on EU energy security, gas supply security, sort of Russia, Gazprom, Ukraine. 10 years ago, there was major interest, of course, in that in Brussels, and we've evolved since, and we've had some interruption, I guess, in our activities last year because of the coronavirus. But I think now, I'd really like to welcome you to our new world. This is the new world of the Brussels Energy Club, where we unfortunately cannot convene with you in our beautiful villa and very private and ambient environment in the center of Brussels, but we now meet with you online in this virtual environment, and we've kind of now relaunched our meetings sort of in the second half of last year online, and we're currently developing this focus on the gas and renewables emerging energy economy series. So our, I guess, uniqueness of our platform as a discussion platform was that we've always been able to bring to Brussels something from outside of town, outside of the European Union, interesting countries, interesting speakers with relevance to, greater European energy security. But now with this kind of online world and online meetings world in which we live, we now kind of have become much more global in our sort of sphere of activities. So just to give you an idea, we have in the last maybe 2 months or so held meetings on gas and renewables in Uzbekistan, on renewable energy in the Republic of Bangladesh, in South Asia, sort of Bay of Bengal. Earlier this month, in fact, we had a fascinating discussion and a very warm welcome to Masoud Hashimyan, who's here with us today from Tehran. And Masoud gave us a wonderful opening discussion on potential for Iranian gas exports, directly live from Tehran. And anyone that knows Masoud Hashimyan, of course, knows that he was the Deputy Petroleum Minister, acting Deputy Petroleum Minister of Iran for quite a long time, and one of the most experienced persons in that sector in Tehran. And today we we move geography a little bit and bring you back towards a little bit closer to Brussels, back to Europe, but a really fascinating part of Europe where, you have countries that are in the process of joining the European Union, countries that have already joined, Then you have, of course, the Energy Community Treaty as a mechanism of developing the EU internal energy market rules, you know, for the Southeast European region, and that has relevance also for countries like Turkey, as well as the Caucasus countries. So, you know, to what degree will, you know, European leadership in energy and climate and, you know, green growth led, let's say, development be able to resonate into the region of Southeast Europe is something that we're going to discuss today. And in order to do that, I'm going to hand you over to someone I know really well and who I think is a fascinating woman and absolutely amazing, I think, not just lawyer and legal expert who runs her own practice and advises so many, I think, stakeholders, you can say, in the wider European and international sort of energy, you know, contract and sort of policy development context. But I think, you know, Anna Stanič, who's going to take you through and further introduce you to her panelists, is one of the great practitioners, I would say, in the field of energy, because she combines, you know, all of these key dimensions of the energy landscape, you know, ranging from the legal side, the market side, the policy side, you know, with some delving into the geological and even engineering sort of side, which one has to have familiarity when they deal with a discipline as complex and as diverse as the energy sector. So I'm really, you know, fantastic welcome to Nadezhda Kokotovic, our also, I should say, advisory board member at the Brussels Energy Club to take you for this session. And just final word from me to all of you, and I will be, of course, in the meeting with you, but the club is really, we're a discussion club. So while Nadezhda will, while Anna Stanič will actually moderate a panel of really, I think, enlightened experts on the subject matter, you know, the purpose of this meeting is to get you involved in the discussion. This is not a webinar. This is a meeting. And this is not, you know, it's not a government meeting. I mean, I work at the Energy Charter Secretariat. We're not in a kind of a formal process. This is an informal discussion club, and it's a discussion club. So, you know, the idea is to have an in-depth discussion to get you into the meeting, for you to raise your questions in a kind of, you know, civilized and, you know, gentlemanly sort of manner. We are recording the meeting, but it's an off-the-record culture. The recording is just for, you know, technical usage within the club. It's not for wider circulation. So that's a key message for people first time. Please do feel welcome. Please do feel, you know, your opportunity to participate in the discussion, and enjoy yourself. That's the most important thing, I think. So Anna, please, over to you, and let's have a fantastic meeting.
Thank you, Marat, and thank you, Nadezhda, and thank you all for joining us. I think Marat has already sort of explained the way we will want to conduct this meeting today, since it's very much, we want to sort of simulate as much as we can, obviously in the virtual context, the informal and friendly environment that we normally have when we have these meetings in Brussels. And as Marat said, Chatham House rules apply. So feel free to, you know, share your views without fear that you will be quoted or in any way cited by what you say. So please also, for all participants, take note of that and don't try to cite anyone or anyone's views that you hear today. Really, the idea is to have as fruitful as a discussion as we have on a topic which I think I'm glad to see is of interest to many of you, particularly in Brussels. We feel, particularly people from the region, that Southeast Europe is given little attention to. And as we will discuss today, but potentially hydrogen and renewable strategies is one of the examples of where Southeast Europe isn't really thought of, not even as a source of potential hydrogen, or even, and also from the point of view of the development of the strategies that are currently being thought of or devised at the EU level. The way in which I propose that we have this meeting is that I will now introduce the members of the panel that I'm delighted will share with us their views, each of which will speak for 7 minutes, and then we will open the floor to everyone. Nadezhda and I will try to manage your, if you put in your chat who wishes to speak, that might be the easiest way for us to manage it. And then we will give each of you the floor to comment. And of course, to the extent you wish to address a specific comment to a member of the panel or to another participant who has made a comment in the past as part of the discussions, please feel free to do so. We will try to, although the virtual setting is not as conducive to a discussion, to try to foster a discussion. So we will have that sort of, if provided the speakers keep to their time, and one of my jobs is to make sure that they do, we should have about an hour and 20 minutes of discussion for all of us to partake in. And we will finish on the dot at 2 o'clock to make sure that everyone can leave and plan their day accordingly. So without much ado, I will now introduce my wonderful panel, which, as you will see, will bring us different perspectives, both in terms of the geography that they come from, but also from the point of view of where, what their role and views of the energy industry as a whole has been. So let me first introduce to you Julian Bowden, who I think to members of BREC is known, but maybe to some of the other participants today is not. Julian Bowden has worked in the past in BP. I think we can safely say that he was known as the man that sort of was key to putting in place TANAP and the whole Southern Corridor as a way to bring gas into Southeast Europe. Since he has left BP back in 2018, he's now been heavily involved with the Oxford Energy Institute and has published a number of papers on Southeast Europe and particularly gas. But recently he's been working on renewables in Southeast Europe. And I'm delighted Julian will be sharing with us his view in particular of the Southeast Europe. First of all, he'll help us define what we mean by Southeast Europe. I think that will be quite helpful for us. And then also to tell us more about what Southeast Europe's legacies are, challenges, and ways to overcome them, and how, how they can try to achieve or should achieve the renewables targets that are set for them, and take part actively in the hydrogen strategy. Next, I'm delighted to invite, for another perspective on the same topics, Gorazd Ažman from the TSO of Slovenia. He's the Assistant Director for Strategic Innovation. And he has previously worked for Geoplin, which was the largest gas trading company. So he's one of the very good examples of what we see as energy transition, including energy transition in terms of people's skills. And he will give us a perspective, a very important perspective of how TSOs are getting ready to address the challenges of energy transition, and in what ways and what are the limitations or how to overcome them in terms of achieving the hydrogen and renewable strategies, particularly in Southeast Europe, which, as we know, is made up of many countries. And so he'll address the issues of economies of scale and how to overcome this. And last and not least, I would like to introduce Ambassador Peter Poptchev, who will give us another perspective, a perspective of a former diplomat and a person involved in energy in Bulgaria. He has represented his country at the EU and the NATO formats. And currently, since he has retired, He's founded an NGO called Net Zero Foundation International Climate Network, in which he continues therefore to consult in foreign and security policy. And Peter will give us a perspective on the geopolitical side of issues, and also specifically address the issue of how the geographical limitations that will need to be overcome in order for the Southeast Europe as a whole, and in fact, I think his point will be the whole of the European Union actually achieving its hydrogen and renewable strategy. And now, without much ado, Julian, the floor is yours, and you have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of slides. I don't know how they can be shown. I don't know if somebody's controlling that.
Yes.
I'm about to put them up for you.
Thank you. I mean, my purpose this morning, can we go to the second one? Thank you. I mean, my purpose in my few minutes here is just to put a bit of sort of context around the problem, to give a few numbers and to put a bit of shape to the discussion. So this is general context. And my focus is going to be on the 5 members of the EU in Southeast Europe. That's Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Croatia, and Slovenia, because they really account for well over 3/4, 80% of the region's GDP. So they're kind of the important ones. This is no respect to the Western Balkans at all, but let's focus for the moment on the big ones, because they're the ones that probably make the difference, can make the difference. Generally, the region, which I take to be these 5 plus the Western Balkans, so I'm excluding Hungary, they're less wealthy than the EU average, with the exception of Slovenia. The EU average GDP per capita is about $41,000 at the moment, whereas these 5 collectively only average 26. You may not think that's it is a big difference. And I think the importance of having this in mind is, and this sort of relative wealth throughout the EU is all about the ability to finance the energy transition at a pace set by the EU, at the pace of the EU timetable. The region is very diverse in its energy characteristics. I'll focus on gas because I think gas does illustrate a lot of the differences and a lot of the problems in implementing policy. The gas sector is important because the region, and I'll come on to this in more detail in a minute, is a very high producing and consuming lignite area, and gas clearly offers a low carbon opportunity relatively quickly for substituting out that lignite. And so I am going to focus a little bit on that issue. And the lessons, one of the features of the region has been its lack of gas interconnectivity, the lack of ability to move gas around the region. And the lessons from addressing that problem, building the interconnectivity, is that it's taken a long time. It's beginning to happen now, but it does take a long time. While the region is diverse in its energy, one common feature is lignite. Most of the countries in this region are big producers and consumers of lignite. On a renewable scale, actually, Southeast Europe is pretty good. So if we take the whole EU 28 in a couple of years ago, in 2018, for which I have still I've got, that's for the data I've got, the most recent. Renewables accounted for 33% of total energy. The Southeast European EU5 was 35%. So you could say they're bang on the EU average. And the main reason for that is their very large hydro capacity. Again, pursuing the differences, what I think we've seen in the last few years is Greece emerging as a regional leader, both in developing wind and in setting targets for removing lignite from the energy mix. Next slide, please. So a few more numbers. If we start with the chart showing lignite production, this just illustrates the sheer volume of lignite being produced in Bulgaria, Greece, Romania, Serbia. If we add all that up, this is about a quarter of Europe's lignite, of the EU's lignite. I know Serbia is in there. Doesn't really make much difference to that statement. It's a quarter. So then moving around clockwise, we can see how much generation is by lignite. You can see in those charts that Bulgaria, Romania, Greece are in these countries. Lignite is a big feature in the power generation. And then the other chart just shows that in percentage terms, and it's the same kind of story that it tells, perhaps more vividly. There is a lot of lignite being used. And then finally, in the table, that just tabulates the volume of electricity being generated and the proportion of that from lignite. And you can see that in those years there, that the roughly 30% was coal generated in aggregate. And I think that sets the dimensions of the problem. The problem in a static sense, in a no development sense, is 60 terawatt hours of lignite. That is the immediate problem to address. And I think that this discussion really should and will focus on what to do about this 30% of coal generation, and how to substitute for that. There's no, I'm not talking about growth. This is purely a today issue, but of course we should factor in growth on top of that. So with that, those are my remarks, and I hope that sets some shape and context to this discussion. So thanks very much.
Julian, maybe just if you could make a few comments on the nuclear side of things, perhaps, before we move on.
Yeah, there is obviously nuclear in the region. By and large, it is aging. It does contribute. I think that we need to think about, what do we do with nuclear? Do we replace it with nuclear, or is it replaced with something else? Is it replaced by renewables? But it clearly is a factor in Romania, in Bulgaria, Slovenia. There is nuclear. Is it going to follow the way of Germany or Switzerland and try and remove it from the mix, or should we see it as a kind of part of the portfolio of solutions that we need to find?
Thank you, Julian. You're bang on time, as always.
Thank you.
Let me now invite Gorazd to pick up here and present his presentation. And everybody, please think of your questions or comments that you will want to when we open the floor to everyone.
Thank you, Anna. So I'll go more from a bottom-up perspective. As mentioned, I'm working for a transmission system operator, where I have the privilege to be part of the team that is looking more into the future, as to have hands-on what's going on really today, with really strong focus on what's ahead of us. So if I go further with elaboration on the coal itself, the biggest challenge we see as a company is, of course, on one side, we see the lowering of the operational hours in relation to coal, but the coal still is strongly supporting flexible part of production also. So it has a strong impact on pricing itself, on marginal pricing itself. And with closing of thermal power plants, what we see is the rise of the prices itself. And if we put that into the context of what Julian just explained in relation to GDP in this region, this is for sure something that we have to have in mind also during today's discussion. Of course, centralized storage and gas are one options. What we do inside of our company, we really do focus on several different projects, research and also investment infrastructure projects, where we strongly relate on cross-border cooperation. So this is something, again, quite specific for the region itself, where especially small countries, it is hard for us to enter in any new projects just by ourselves. So we are looking for cross-border cooperation. Let's say with Future Flow project, it involves Slovenia, Austria, Hungary, and Romania. Let's say Synchro project is a really strong cooperation between Slovenia and Croatia. And what we see and what we learned from this project is that the next challenge we see is how to go from demonstration or pilots projects to full scale. So how to finance this part, because for those projects you see on the right side of your screen, all of these projects were co-financed by either EU or some other schemes. So how to go full scale. Then from this second type of actions, what's really important is cross-section action. So what the next step we see is going cross-sector. Why? It's not just replacing coal, but it's also adding additional or supporting additional needs for electricity, because electrification of transport and heating itself. So how these things will be addressed? We all came along discussions related to Power to X, so where we see somehow electricity as intermediate. We see it very much differently. We see everything more as intersection of electricity, transport, and clean gas and heat. Why? It's just hard or even impossible to imagine that part of already built infrastructure would not be used. So if you remember from the first presenter, from Julian, when he pointed out the difficulty of building infrastructure, different infrastructure. That's one thing. And again, why we see that as an intersection is that when we take a look of what the future energy mix is, if we want to replace also part of energy mix, not just for electricity, but also for transportation and heating sector, it's basically sun. So energy coming from the sun itself that we have to take care of. And here the biggest challenge is, that it's a lot of that during the summertime. We do have already models in place, and we do test models how to put sun within the day, how to stimulate putting the solar energy into the e-vehicles during the day. But the biggest open challenges, is how to capture it and store it for the winter, for this part of Europe especially. Because again, with the GDP itself, also the heating is a social component. The pricing of heating is of the same importance as the price of electricity itself. And here we come to the intersection of green gases, of hydrogen, which is one of the important pillars we work on. So if in the first part of the presentation, I did tackle, let's say, smart grids and electricity storage as such, I would here like to close, let's say, with also importance of green gases, of hydrogen, from several points of view, you know. So how to store it, how to use with green gases existing infrastructure, and how to also help the proper balance between different infrastructure types, having in mind gas infrastructure, transport infrastructure, electricity infrastructure. And with this part, we of course see already from cooperation, we do cooperate with Slovenian gas system operator, with two both generation companies that hold most of the renewable production in Slovenia. We are looking how to come up or how to put together a cross-sector project, and it's really hard. So we came already along challenges, who finance what part of the project. So that's the first step, let's say, really from the company perspective. And then the next thing is, we are very well aware that in this stage we need support from governments and from EU to serve as a catalyst to support these activities. Yeah.
Sono una chiamata con un'altra persona.
Okay. And for us is then the challenge that when we come up with a project, we have to compete for EU funding with the larger countries, where we see that certain specific calls are really already now heavily relying on economy of scale. So the project has to be big. New technologies, especially hydrogen, are really dependent. The pricing is really dependent on the size of the project. You know, the size defines the pricing per megawatt. So here we see quite some challenges, you know, in this regard. And that's, let's say, the message where I stop and leave the floor to Peter.
Thank you, Gorazd. You're also perfectly on time. I must have scared you both in keeping your time. Thank you so much. And Peter, the floor is now yours for the third perspective of the complex issues that face Southeast Europe.
Just 1 second, I'll put up Peter's slides. There we go. Peter, the floor is yours. He needs to unmute his mic and he can speak.
So, thank you, Marat, but I don't need the slides right now.
Okay.
I might use them during the discussion, but I have to stick to the 7 minutes and it's difficult. So, I am tempted to answer Gorazd's very pertinent questions he put and his considerations, but I'd rather stick to my notes, which I begin with, you know, suggesting that I address today's topic on the basis of the overall concept and the operational provisions of the European Green Deal. In my analysis, everything starts and finishes with the European Green Deal. The region is not defined in any of the concepts that various countries or the EU have proposed. It is indeed commendable, and I congratulate the Brussels Energy Club for organizing a meeting specifically on Southeast Europe because the region does need attention and few people care about it, let alone institutions. But as we aim at an integrated energy system type of regional market, we have to think in broader terms, like CESEC or the 3 Cs initiative. Now, I'm not a fan of CESEC. I've been in a few meetings and the results are perhaps worse than expected, but for the time being, we don't have anything better. And I mention CESEC because the Commission recognizes it, institutions like IRENA recognize it. So if we put Southeast Europe into the broader, let's say, contour, it will be only profitable for the region for the reasons that Julian already mentioned. Now, my vision is that Southeast Europe has the potential to become a substantial, I repeat, substantial component of the future European hydrogen ecosystem, alongside Italy, Portugal, and Spain, in particular if these parts of Europe, as intended by some strategists, link their hydrogen pipeline to North Africa. So from this point of view, Greece, in our case, can play a very important role because it can connect to Egypt, a hydrogen pipeline coming from Egypt. Then it's important that in the next generation EU, and this is where the money is, investment, the investment schemes highlight hydrogen as an investment priority to boost economic growth and resilience, create local jobs, and mind you, consolidate the EU's global leadership. Now, this is very important because this region, Southeast Europe, is where the actual physical and geographic connection can be established between the EU and the southern neighborhood and the eastern neighborhood. Now, the countries in Southeast Europe, or indeed in Central and Southeast Europe, cannot do this job alone, but the Commission will have to appreciate this and do something to really foster its more global ambitions. The potential of the region in terms of renewables is much, much bigger than it exists now, even though Julian commended the percentage. But according to IRENA, the International Agency for Renewables, the CESEC countries can increase cost effectively to 2030 their renewables share by another 34%, and the contracting parties to the energy community by 30%. Now, mentioning the energy community, we have to say that on paper, their mission statements actually are rather in line with the European Green Deal. But with all due regard, the community seems to be short on performance, on delivery. So we need a special, let's say, to organize special efforts to sort of put an impetus to assist and to work with the 6 Western Balkan countries. And if I may suggest, if this discussion today and with the agreement of the Brussels Energy Club, we could initiate an international roundtable, perhaps even a conference, to consider the inclusion of the contracting parties in the Western Balkans in a wider regional integrated energy system market. Now, I come to the point which I've entitled The Real Challenge. Where's the real challenge? Gorazd already mentioned it. I'll perhaps give you broader lines. Put it simply, we need to raise the energy and all other relevant sectors of all the Southeast European countries, not just the Western Balkans, to the level of their developed Western European peers, or close enough. The new green economy needs a robust process of innovation and technology adoption. Mind you, 75% of the technologies needed to implement the carbon neutrality intentions of Europe are not yet discovered. They are not yet implemented in practice. So with these, as Julian pointed out, feeble economies, broadly speaking, you need clustering both on a national level and internationally, in terms of research and development, in terms of sharing theoretical and practical knowledge on industrial processes and products and so on. A massive influx of digitalization schemes, artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions, grid response and grid harmonization. We need grid harmonization in this region, and actually the wider region of Central and Southeast Europe. And then measures for energy efficiency. This is something that is rarely mentioned, but it is the workhorse of the energy transition. And in these countries, in this part of Europe, energy transition must precede, or at worst be simultaneously carried out with all the other policies developed under the energy system integration regional market. I have two more points, Anna, if you permit. The role of the EU Commission and the European Investment Bank. Now, because of the, let's say, potential geopolitical in energy and climate terms importance of this region, the Commission will have to somehow develop specific policies. In the original European Green Deal communication of 19th December 2019, the Western Balkans is just mentioned, but it is not, this concept is not developed. Someone has to do it. We are ready to do it. The Commission will have to provide strategic guidance, and the European Investment Bank should provide the necessary financing. And lastly, the European Green Deal is probably the most, or the first really important programmatic designs of the of the EU, which centers and gears towards the interests of the citizens. This is a big opportunity. So the voice of Europe's civil society, like today, has to play a much bigger role than now. This has to be organized. This has to be, in particular, NGO and academic and civic entities from all these Southeast European countries, and indeed, I repeat, Central and Southeast European countries, should somehow come together, or periodically, because, sorry, the citizens this time around, they need results that can be really felt, really appreciated by the individual customer. Thank you very much for the time being.